Alright, so welcome back. So in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to do web scraping or web scraping in Rust, right? So let's see the simple workflow. So to scrape a website means that you want to go to their website and then fetch some data from that, right? Which you're allowed to do so. So let's see an example. So the basic workflow is that you can use a library called scraper and a request to help us get the resource, and a scraper to be able to simply scrape from a particular website. So you have an HTML, which can be something like this, and then you have to pass this HTML data that you have into a parser. Then you specify the selector. So the selector is like a way of trying to describe which element, which of these tags that you have here, whether it's an anchor tag, a nav tag, or h1 tag, that you want to select the data from. So you create that one, and then you use the parser to select based on the selector that you have, right? And then you can do any other processing on it. So let's see how to do that in Rust. So I'll go back again to our workspace here. I'm going to create inside my Rust roadmap. I'll call it as cargo new web scraper. Then I'll move into my web scraper. It's supposed to be web scraper, right? And then let's open it with VS Code. I'm going to open it with VS Code, and I'm going to see how to do that. So the idea is that we need some libraries to help us with that. So let's start with the basics. So the first library we will need to help us with scraping in Rust is called Scrapper, right? So I can just go back here and just go with cargo new add, oh, not cargo new add, but cargo add scraper, right? So that is the name of the library, and then we are going to install it on our system. It's going to be added here. Right. You can also use Reqwest to help us with that, but let's start one at a time. So I'll come back here, and then we see how to use scraper, right? So the first thing is that you need to import scraper, so use, and then you can simply go with use scraper, right? Then you can just import the HTML, the stuff that you need, or just go with this option so that it's easy for us. You can just simply do this. And then we will now start working with it. So first, let's have an example document. So we need an HTML file like this to be able to use for our work. So to make it easy, I'm just going to create a simple HTML example that we'll be using for our work, right? Something simple. So I'll come down here. Then inside my example here, I'm creating a variable called let example. Then I'm just using regular expression. So this is the simple stuff here. So we have, let's change it from hello world to, let's say, hello Rustaceans, right? And then we have some links, right? So we want to see how do you scrape some of the contents from it. So let's take off this, and then let's start. The first thing is that based on this our workflow, you have to get your data, pass it, create a selector, and then select. So step number one, pass the HTML data, right? And we do that with the document. So it's going to be, let's say, let's document. Then I'm going to go with my scraper or scrapper. Then we have HTML. Then I'm going to say there is pass document and pass fragment. So pass fragment means if you have a simple HTML, something like this, it's a fragment, right? But in case you will have a full HTML page or resource, you can just go with pass document. Then I'll just pass in the example, right? The example that I want to pass. So let's go with my example. Perfect. So that is how to pass the HTML. That's the first thing. The next thing is you need, so in case I want to print this out, I can print it out so that you see it out, print. Then let's go with the option here. Then I'll just go with my document. So if I print this one out here, you can see that it's going to be so super huge. So let's run, and then it's going to compile everything and going to get this entire stuff that we have here. So that is how it's checking, doing cargo check, and you see that it has printed it out for us, right, with all of this information that we have here. And you can see that they are inside something called some node, so it passes the entire stuff into nodes, right? So you can actually loop through them. In case you want to do, you can just do dot tree, so that there is tree dot node. You can actually iterate through them, right? So you see that we have something like this. You can actually loop through the entire stuff to get all of them. And then this is the nodes. So it's passing the entire stuff as an iterable of nodes that you can actually loop through them. Perfect. Now that is the first. The next thing we can do is that we need a selector. So a selector is something that is going to specify which of these that we want. So in case I want to get let's say the p tags, right? How do I select it? So an example is something like this. I can specify that I want to get all the p tags. So let's say I want to get this is working. So I can just go my p selector, or I can just say selector, right? Then I'll just go with my scripper. Then we have the selector. Then inside this, I'll just go with my pass and I'll specify the selector. So here is p. I just want the p tag. Perfect. Then once I have the p tag, I can now loop through it. I can now get this one. So the simplest example is, you notice that this is called sum, right? You can use the same idea. So we can say something like this. So let and just do match or if. So if let sum, because that's what we are getting. Then I'll go with my p element. Let's go as p element. I want to get the p element. Then I'll pass in my document dot select, right? So you create a selector, then you pass in your selector, right? That's it. So with this option here, now I can actually get that selector. Then because we notice that it's an iterator, right? We will need to get the first option. So I can just go with nest. You can see that there's into iter, nest back. I'll go with the nest, and then I can now unpack it. So if it finds the first one, it's going to print it out. Then let's get the entire stuff. So I can say let p test. I want to get the test. I want to get this test from it, right? That's what I'm doing. So I've gotten the selector, then the p test, then I'll just go the p element dot. Then we have all of these things. We can, because it's a node, you can get the children, the descendant, and the rest. But I want to get the test from it. Then I want to convert this test to whatever I want. So I can just convert this one to a string. Right. Remember that if you're using collect, you should specify the return type. I want it to be in a string. So this is a simple approach that you can do, right? And now we are going to get the entire stuff as a string. Then I can now print line. Let's get the stuff that we got from it. Let's say this is the p. Perfect, right? So else. So we are saying that if this is the case, we want to return this, else we want to print couldn't find it, right? No p tag. So let's say no p tag found. So this is another approach you can do, right? And now we have this p selector here that is given as this error, but now I have to call it as a variable because let p tag, and it works. So the reason we are having this error here is that we have to unwrap it, right? Because this one returns a result and then the error. So I have to unwrap it, or I have to do the question mark. So I can just do unwrap to get only the result aspect of it. Right? And then let's run it. So now if I run this, you see that it's going to return this is working, right? So that is how to work with the scripper. So you have your data, your resource. It can be a Wikipedia page. Then I will now pass in the HTML data, specify the selector that I want, and then I will now select. Perfect. So that is a simple overview of it, right? Very simple approach. Now, in case I want to get all the href inside this, so I have all this href, I want to get all of them. How do I do that? Which is some very important you can also do. So how to get all the href. So how do I get all the href inside this, right? So the href means I want to find all the href and then get this one, and then get the links as well as get this data, right? So it's a very important stuff. So in case you go to Wikipedia, let's say wiki, so let's say Wikipedia API, something like this, and then you want to scrap all the lists. So if I search this, inspect, you see that we have the p tag, right? In case I want to get all these links, I can just click on this, then select, and then you see that we have this link. So in case I want to script all of this, I want to get this link together with the test in between. How do I do that? That is a use case. It's very useful, right? So in case you have, let's say, a list of, you can say, of AI startups, Wikipedia. We have something like this, list of artificial companies. Then in case I want to script all of this, because if I click on this one here, so this is an anchor tag, right? And within the list, the unordered list, the list, and then we have this URL. I want to script all of them, get this one and get this one. We can use this approach for it, right? So let's see how to do that. So I come down here, and then we will just specify the tag. So I want to get my Ahref tags, right? It is big, but yeah, let's keep it like that. Then I'll specify my scripper. So let's go with my scripper, then the selector. Then I'll just specify what I want. So I want to get all the anchor tags from it, right? Then I can just do the same thing. So unwrap. So I've gotten the anchor tag, which refers to this anchor tag. So I'm getting all of this anchor tag. You can also specify that you don't want to only just get the anchor tag, but you also want to get the anchor tag and attribute. You can also do the same thing. So in that case, I'll just go back here. I've gotten the anchor tag, and then I can say that, okay, I want to store them inside a link, right? You can actually store the entire stuff inside a link, or if you don't want to store it, you can just go for my element inside my document that I have, right? I want to now pass the selector on it, just as we did here, and I'm going to pass this my anchor tag selector. Then once I pass it there, I can now get it. So let's get the href from it, which is going to be my element dot value, right? And then I can specify that, okay, I'm getting the value, but I want to specify which attribute I want. So this entire stuff here is the tag, this is the attribute, and then we want to get the data here, right? So specify the attribute you want, and then the tag, the attribute I want, and I want to fetch it. You can also use it from here with the selector, but I want to look through it, right? Then I'll just go with my attribute here. The attribute here is called href. Then I can just unwrap it and then give an error, so no href, yeah, right? So something like this. Then with this option here, I can get all the href. So let's run it with this simple one we have done. Let's run it again. So print line, and then I can say, okay, link, this is href, right? I want to get, this is going to give us only the href that we have. So let's go back here and then call it my href. Perfect. So if I run this one, let's hide this tag here. We don't want to use this one anymore. I've gotten how to use it. If I come down and I run this, so now we have gotten out of this our list that we had this one, this one, this one, and this one. We have gotten all of them, right? So this is how to script what is inside the attribute, right? Now, in case I want to get this value, how do I do that? So I can just do the same. So let's go with my let the test, right, that I want to get from it. Then element dot test. Then I'll just pass in case you want to convert it into a string. So the same thing we did here. This is very important. In case you want to get a test, I'll just run the same, and now I'm going to get all the tests. I can now pass in and then the test, right? So if I run it again, now we are going to get the URL and then the test, right? Which is very useful. So you can actually apply this entire stuff you have done to get all the links from this Wikipedia page. So let me copy this one and we'll try it as an example. So I'll just come down here and then let URL be equal to this, right? So you can actually use this one to script it. Perfect. So that is how to it. Now, in case you also want to script these things into JSON, right? I want to get this, to get the data into JSON file, right? How do I do that? So I want to get the href and the test. So what I can do is that I can get, or in case I want to get this one into JSON, I can first get the entire stuff into a list. So I can simply do something like this. So let's say let mutable links, right? Be equal to, let's create a vector. I create a vector which I'll be storing. So I'm creating a vector that I'll be storing this data inside, right? And once I loop through it, I can now push to it. So I can now come down here and do links dot push. Then I can push in the data that I want. So I can push in the information. So in case I want to push in all the href, I can push in all the href. And now if I run this again, so we have gotten it out, I can now come back and do print line. Because it's an array, I have to go with, or a collection, to go with this option here. And now if I run it, so we have gotten our list, right? You can see the list here. Perfect. So that is one way we can also do that, right? So you can also use the same idea that we have to be able to get the links. And then if you know what you have, you can also use a struct. So we can create a struct. So let's do the same. So I'm going to create a simple struct outside of this place. So let's go out of here. And then I'll create my simple struct. Then inside this struct, I can call it as a link struct. Then it takes in the href, which is a string. And then it also takes in the test itself, which is a string, right? So these are the struct that I've created. And then we need to serialize this. So we can use sed. So use sed. Then I can import serializer. I can spell serializer. And then deserialize. Right, so serialize and deserialize to help me get this. And I can just use so something like this, right? So I need to install this option here. Then I can use sed JSON to simply convert the entire stuff, right? To write the entire stuff to a JSON file, which is very useful for us. So I can just also go with use sed JSON. Can spell. I hope this is not too small. Make it bigger. Yeah, perfect. So let's add these packages. So I'll go with cargo. Add a sed. Then the feature I want is the derive attribute. So features derive. Then it's going to add it to it. And then I'll do the same for sed JSON. Right, so that we have the two of them there. And then with these two, I am going to convert this one. It's supposed to be here. We have the derive macro. Then I'll pass in the serialize or deserialize, because this is the deserialization, right? Perfect. and I can now, when I'm looping through the entire data that I have, so in case I loop through the data, I can simply come down here. So we have extract already. Since we have extract, we can now serialize it. So I can push into this list here. I can do my link. Then this link takes in an href, which is going to be my href to string. I just convert to string. And the other one was the test, which is going to be my normal test, right? Perfect. So something like this. And then since I'm pushing it there, now we have gotten my links here as a struct. So now this doesn't implement debug, right? You can simply add debug to it so that you can print it, so that you derive debug. And then yeah, let's hide this. Okay, perfect. So we have gotten everything into a list, and now we can convert it to JSON. So let's JSOnified or JSON links. Then I'll just pass setty JSON. Then we have to string. Then I'll pass in, or we can do to pretty string. Pretty, so that we have it in a pretty format. Now pass in my links. Right, then let's unwrap it because it returns a result. Now we have gotten this. Let's hide this one. We have gotten our links here. Perfect, right? The reason we're having this error here is that we have to specify the return type of this, right? But let's see. So we need to serialize it, right? The trait serialize is not satisfied, so we have to go to our struct, and not just deserialize, we also need to serialize it. And now the trait is implemented on this, and then I can now write this one to a file. So in case I want to write this one to a file, we learned earlier on how to write to a file. So I can simply do let's mut file be equal to use file from standard library. We can do std io, not io, fs file create, right? And then I just pass in the file. So let's say links.json. Then let's unwrap it because it returns a result type. And now I can just write it. So file.write all. Then I'll pass in my JSON file links as byte. Perfect. Then let's unwrap. That's how to actually write something to a file. So we are scraping all the links, and then we are going to write it to a JSON file, right? Which is very important, right? So if I run it again, now it's going to compile behind the scene, then it's going to script it, then it's going to return it for us inside here. Right, so now we have it here. So if I open it, we have the href and then the test, the href and the test. So we can actually apply all this that you have done with Reqwest, right? So in case I want to use Reqwest library to fetch all the links from here, I can do that. So maybe in another tutorial we'll see how to work with Reqwest library to be able to fetch data from a resource, right? You can use the sync format or the async format. So we can do something like fetch from a resource and then process it, right? So we can do the same thing. So something like this. Let's do a simple example. So let's go with cargo add request request. I think it's like this, right? Yeah, request. And then we also have to add block into it. Feature, say certain features. blocking, right? So they'll be able to use it. There's also async in sockets, and then H2, HTTP2, all of them. But we want to just use a simple one. So I have this my link here in case I want to fetch this one out of it without using blocking or using blocking. I can simply write a function that gets me that option here, which can be something like this. So I can have my link here, this URL. So instead of using this document that we are using, I can change it, right? So let's change this document. So using the same logic, using a request to get the language. So I just go with this option here. I need to import request with an external crate. Then I get the result. Because I'm using blocking, I can just go back to unwrap. And once I get the response, so I've gotten the response, I can now pass this response to my document, right? So we had the document here, which we created on top here. So instead of this option, I can now pass it here. It's another way, right? So I'll just pass in this one. So let's go to the example so that we do not. So let's hide this and then hide the other one that we use. So in this case, we are getting the result. Let's say, yeah. So yeah, we have gotten the result. So I can just go back here and then say something like, so let response body be equal to the request that I've gotten. So request example, or let's make it like this. This is not correct. Response, and then we will call it response.test, right? So just going to get the test from there, and then I'll pass in this one here to process it. No, right? Perfect. So this is a simple way we can do that. So it's getting this result string type error request. We can actually process it with this option here. Hopefully it works. Yeah. Let's unwrap. We always have to unwrap. Okay, and now we'll be fetching using the same document to go to Wikipedia and then fetch all the links from there. So let me change the name of my file and let's call it as AI startup links, and let's run it. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, that's going to be an assignment. So this is blocking. It's a blocking code, right? It's synchronous, so you have to go to the website, fetch all of these things and return. And that is why sometimes you have to handle the errors, right? Because this unwrap, you don't even know if an error occurred, if there was a panic. Right? You won't even know. So it's taking some time for it to fetch, fill it with request, and then work on it. So that is a simple overview of how to use how to do web scraping in Rust. We have seen how it works. You need to get your HTML. It can be your HTML data in a file or from a resource, a website somewhere, in which you can use request to pass it. Then you pass in your HTML data into your parser. Then you specify your selector. So the selector is which of these HTML tags you want to pick. Then you select, right? And then you can apply any other methods to it. So let's see if that's finished. Yeah, and now it has finished. If I go to here, now we have gotten all the links in our wiki, right? So many, it's so much. So you'd see the undetectable AI, Spectre AI, which is very useful. We have got SAI and the rest. So thank you for watching this tutorial. See you another time. Stay blessed.